Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, blissed. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Jason's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to call us, here's the number. 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line, 712-770-9418, 712-770-9418. Dr. Norm Shealy's with us. Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yes.
Well, where would you like to go? Do you have any questions for me, Dr. Shealy, or do you want to talk
about? Lots of questions for you. It's not always appropriate for this program. I mean, you are my experiential, put-it-together guru.
Okay. So do you, did you have some questions about solar and what happens when the grid goes down? Did you want to talk about that for a few minutes?
Indeed, I did, because, there was that article suggesting that even though solar is great, if the grid goes down, it ain't going to work.
Okay. Did you want me to discuss that, what that means?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. All right. So there's three kinds of solar systems. And one is called on-grid, another is off-grid, and the third would be hybrid. So an on-grid system has a solar panel array and a charge controller, if you will, and an inverter. And what happens is the solar panels receive light from the sun. It gets regulated by the charge controller, goes to an inverter, which takes direct current, which the solar panels provide, and converts it to AC. And the alternating current is of a higher voltage than that you would get out of your wall outlet or your breaker panel. And so let's say you get about 240 volts out of your breaker panel, and that would be split into 120 and 120 at the outlets. The on-grid system has no battery, and what it does is it'll take that solar energy, convert it from DC, direct current, to AC at a higher voltage than the electrical panel at your location. Let's say 260 volts, 260, 20 volts higher, let's say, for example. And because the voltage is higher from your solar system, it will go onto the grid. If the grid's voltage is higher, the voltage or the current will come from the grid onto your solar system. So whoever has the higher voltage or the highest voltage wins. So you'll be pushing your electricity onto the grid, and simultaneously you can draw from the grid. So you can generate electricity, push it onto the grid. The grid becomes your battery in this example. So you have no battery, but the grid is your storage system. It acts like a battery. The grid provides a frequency of 60 cycles per second, also known as 60 hertz. That clock frequency is required by your solar system in an on-grid system in order to generate electricity and send it to the grid. The grid provides the clock or the frequency, because if you're out of frequency, out of step, even a little bit, you'll be causing massive problems, probably burn up your equipment. So the clock has to be provided from one location, and that's the grid, and that's 60 cycles per second in North America. If the grid goes down, the clock goes down with it. If the clock goes down, your solar system cannot generate any electricity. And the battery that you were thinking that you had, which is the grid, goes down with it. So you lose everything. You lose all the ability to generate electricity in the system as it's currently configured. So that's an on-grid system. Now, an off-grid system has similar components, except it has a battery bank. And what happens with an off-grid system, you get the electricity generated from the solar panels, goes through the charge controller to regulate the amount of electricity and voltage coming out of the solar panels, and it goes into a battery bank. And simultaneously, that battery bank provides current to the inverter, which provides electricity to your location or your house or your farm or whatever you happen to be connecting. The difference is the battery bank. A physical battery bank of an off-grid system is yours. You charge it with your solar array, and you have what you have. If you've got plenty of sun, you've got plenty of charge on the battery, assuming everything is sized properly. Now, if the battery bank runs out of current, let's say you use more than you've generated, and the battery bank, you have a dead battery, let's say. Well, you've got no electricity, unless you hook it up to a generator. Now, a generator can charge the battery bank, and then the battery bank can provide the current for the inverter to convert DC to AC. And the battery bank would be direct current. The inverter would convert from direct current to, let's say, in our house, we have a 48-volt battery bank. It's large. It's about, maybe 8 feet long, and let's say 2.5 feet tall. That's the battery bank. Our battery bank is 48 volts. It consists of 40 cells. Each cell weighs about 100 pounds, and each cell is about 1.2 volts. So you take 40 cells, put them in series, plus to minus, plus to minus, plus to minus, 40 of them, and we will get 1.2 times 40 or 48 volts. So that's our battery bank. Now you can have a battery bank of 36 volts, 24 volts, 12 volts. And so as technology gets newer and newer and newer, the voltage gets higher of the battery bank. So the difference is an on-grid system will only work when it's connected to the grid. If the grid goes down, you've got nothing. If someone hits the power pole and the electricity goes down to your house, you have no electricity, even though you have a solar panel, even though you have a charge controller, and even though you have an inverter, because you don't have that 60-cycle reference frequency. So that's the main difference. Now, a hybrid system is what we have here at our farm, and it's both. It's on-grid, off-grid, and it's called hybrid. So our system, we can sell electricity to the power grid if we want to, at the push of a button. We can take ourselves off the grid at the push of a button, or we could be selling and buying at the same time. So that's what we have. Now, the main cost difference, it's almost twice as expensive to have a system that has a battery bank as it is to have one without a battery bank. And it's interesting, very interesting that you mentioned this, Dr. Shealy, when in your email to me, because I happen to be topping off our supplies at the supermarket, Aldi, over the weekend. And I ran into this middle-aged gal, and we chatted for a second, well, maybe a minute or two. And she said that she is in the business of installing and selling solar systems. I said, wow, so what kind of battery bank do you recommend? And she...
I know the answer.
And that's where she fell flat on her face, because she didn't know. She didn't know, and the reason she didn't know is she doesn't sell systems that are off-grid and hybrid. She only sells on-grid systems. So she is in the business of traveling the country, selling people solar systems, and she has no idea what the battery alternative would be, meaning the off-grid system or the hybrid system. She has no idea. She couldn't discuss it. Now, It's kind of like what I saw on YouTube. I was looking at people buying appliances like refrigerators and washers and dryers, and they have this overweight woman at, the big box store who's recommending, middle-aged overweight woman, recommending what people buy in terms of appliances. Now, she was unable to discuss the mechanics, the electronics, the mechanisms of these machines. But yet she's the person that you go to and say, so which one should I buy? Should I buy that one or this one? Or what about that other one? Which is the best? And I'm sure that's what people ask. But she really doesn't know because she hasn't studied engineering, she hasn't studied electronics, and she doesn't know mechanics. But she can talk about features. So that's not durability. So here we have, that kind of a scenario with this lady that I met at Aldi over the weekend, and she had no idea about battery banks. And so when she sells a system, if she doesn't tell her customers, look, I just want you to know that even though it may be sunny, and even though there may be snow on the ground, and even though you sweep off the snow from your solar array so sun can get to the photocells, you're not going to have any electricity because if the grid goes down, the reference frequency goes down. So we have people selling things that they really don't know much about. And I can't understand it. I can't understand how someone could sell something without knowing the rest of the story. Meaning, how could you just sell an on-grid system without knowing about the alternatives, the hybrid system and the off-grid system? How is that possible? Well, I just saw it firsthand this weekend.
That's why I wanted you to discuss this, because my suspicion is that a majority of those sold are on grid.
Yes, they are. They are. And here's another thing. What they are led to believe, I believe, I haven't personally encountered a salesperson to tell me this, but I believe that people are being led to think that they're going to save money on their electric bill because they're going to have a solar array on their roof. And yeah, they'll save money, but the time that my calculation is that it will take 13 years minimum to recover the cost, to break even when you count the cost of the solar array and the equipment and the wiring and the installation. It'll take 13 years to break even. That's a long time. That's a long time.
Well, of course, and even a diesel backup is no guarantee, because if the grid goes down, we aren't going to have diesel available.
That's correct. And there's a thought that if you have a diesel generator, which is the most efficient of all the generators, in my opinion, it's more efficient than propane, it's more efficient than gasoline. There are more BTUs in a gallon of propane. I'm sorry, in diesel than there is in propane. So, for example, you get about 135,000 BTUs of energy in a gallon of diesel, about 100 in gasoline, and about 90,000 in propane. Those are rough numbers because it depends on the grade of the gasoline. It depends. There are a lot of factors, but those are rough numbers. And so your durability in terms of the generator life expectancy is going to be the longest, generally speaking, with a diesel generator than it will be with gasoline and propane. But we can talk a little bit more about this when we come back. Dr. Norm Shealy's with us, and he asked me the question about if the grid goes down, do solar systems go down, or can they? And the answer is yes, they can. Class Dr. Norm Shealy's with us. NormShealy.com, NormShealy.com. And we're talking about solar systems, and I mentioned the answer to Dr. Shealy's question. If the grid goes down and you have a grid tied, which means on-grid system, grid tied equals on-grid. If the grid goes down, you have no electricity because you do not have a battery bank. So you would spend about twice as much money, all things being equal, if you have an off-grid hybrid system as we have, as you would for a grid-tied system, because the battery bank is about half the cost of the entire system. So our battery bank is, rough numbers, about $10,000. But no one knows how long our battery bank will last, because they started making this Edison battery back around 1906. And all you do to renew the battery bank is you pour out the electrolyte, you rinse out the cell with water, distilled water, and then you refill it with new electrolyte. And it's darn close to almost brand new. I mean, maybe 99% new.
Now, where do you get electrolyte in an emergency?
Well, I have to buy that. I haven't bought that yet, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to have that on hand, KOH, and it's probably going to be about maybe $1,000 for enough to last, another 30, 40 years. But the electrolyte should last about 20 years. Now, what is a consumable? Now, Dr. Shealy, you saw our solar system. You saw the battery bank. And you saw the physical size is pretty big. It would not fit in the back of a full-size pickup truck. It just wouldn't fit physically.
That is true.
And
it would take a big garage.
Yeah. And so I got an email from a company that sold a battery bank similar to ours. We bought ours directly from China because just the markup was so high that we decided we'll just deal directly with the factory. And so one of our instructors and I split an order of 81 cells. I wanted an extra one. So we bought 81. He wanted 40. I wanted 40. And they were 500 ampere hours apiece. And they were shipped to us, and then we brought them to him. So we have half 40, and he has half 40. And by doing that, we were able to get them at about $10,000 each, rather than a lot more. And so I got an email from a company who sold a battery bank to one of their customers. They charged $45,000 for the battery bank, 48-volt battery bank. And it was 3 years old, and the customer wanted to sell it and wanted a different technology. And it's now available for $15,000, 3 years old, which is still more than we paid for it. But the bottom line is the battery bank is expensive, and you have to maintain it. Now, we keep about 20 or more gallons of distilled water on hand because we have to top off the batteries every month or two. We just check them and add distilled water because of the evaporation of the distilled water from the electrolyte. So they do have to be maintained if you have a nickel-iron battery. Now, you can get a lithium battery if you want, or another technology. I don't know much about the other technologies other than the fact that they're so complicated and so difficult to charge that you have to have a computer-controlled charger. And I did not want to have a complex charger to charge the batteries. I can charge ours with just, the equivalent of a automotive charger if I wanted to. Or I could buy one that you use for a forklift, to charge forklift batteries. I could use that rather than a complicated computer-controlled charger for lithium-ion batteries. But to translate this back to the generator, so let's say you had a 5,000 to 8,000 watt generator, 5,000 watts to 8,000 watts. That would use about a gallon of gasoline per hour if you bought one at those big box stores. Let's say an $800 generator or a $700 generator. Now, that if you ran it 24 hours a day, you would use 24 gallons of gasoline a day. Who has 24 gallons of gasoline stored? That's just for one day. If you ran it for a week, it'd be 168 gallons. That's $336 a week if you bought fuel at $2 a gallon. So that's not practical. So what is practical is the battery bank. And we can get back and talk a little bit more about that if you'd like, Dr. Shealy. Dr. Shealy's with us, normshealy.com. Class, Dr. Shealy's with us, and we're just talking a little bit about generators and solar systems. So, Dr. Shealy, here's an interesting thought about generators. So if someone does not have a solar system and they think, well, just get a generator, we talked about how much gasoline one of those generators would use, roughly 24 gallons a day. And so that would be $336 worth of gasoline a week, $1,400 worth of gasoline a month, $17,000 worth of gasoline a year at $2 a gallon. But here's the thing to consider. Those generators typically do not have an oil filter. And because they don't have an oil filter, you are required to change the oil every 25 hours or once a day. So you'd be using about a quart of oil in addition to the gasoline every day. So if you wanted to run it for a month, you'd need about 30 quarts of oil to, change your oil every day. That's something that, some people just haven't considered. The other thing is, how long do those generators last? Well, they run wide open throttle, 3,600 revolutions per minute on the engine. And those engines are like lawnmower engines, and they're typically designed to last about 30 days, 30 days. They are not long-term engines. Typically, they're not industrial engines, so they don't last very long. 30 days of continuous running if you change the oil every day, every 25 hours or so. So that's a huge problem, and people think that they're going to last forever. Now, your generator, you have a diesel. I have not seen it, but you've mentioned you have a diesel. And diesel engines are way stronger and last way longer. They're like, truck engines. They last a long time. At our farm, we have a diesel generator as well, and it's from the 1980s, I believe. Maybe the 1990s, early 1990s. So if it's from the 80s, it's about 40 years old. If it's from the 90s, it's about 30 years old. And it's like, in terms of condition, it's in perfect condition because it was a heavy-duty military generator. And I'm sure yours is a heavy-duty generator as well because it's a diesel. So those are just a couple things to think about. So if you think that if the grid goes down, you'll be able to just go get some gasoline for your generator, the answer is it's not likely because if the grid goes down, the gas station's pumps don't work.
Well, I really think that, this is the ultimate information you need to be prepared.
Okay.
So I'm glad.
Yeah. Now, you and I have diesel on our locations, on our farms, and farmers do. That's, tractors run on diesel. If you have a gasoline tractor, you're not paying attention because gasoline is not a good fuel for a tractor. It doesn't have enough BTUs, and gasoline engines are not as strong typically as a diesel engine, so they don't last as long. So you really need a diesel engine for your tractor, and if you really want to have a generator that's going to last a long time, you have a diesel generator. And then the cool thing about all that is the same fuel runs in both. So your tractor fuel is the same as your diesel generator fuel. But even if you have a diesel generator, as you do, Dr. Shealy and I do, here at our farms, it is not practical to run a diesel generator 24 hours a day. It's just not practical. It uses way too much fuel. So your generator and ours will probably burn about a half a gallon per hour. So a half a gallon is going to be 12 gallons a day. It's still a lot of fuel. So what you have to do is, my recommendation would be pump the water. It's easier to store water than it is to store electricity. So you pump your water, you fire up your generator, you pump your water, you get your refrigeration systems working, your freezer and your refrigerator, you cool everything down, and then you shut the generator off for a few hours. And then you start it up for another half hour and bring the refrigerator and freezer back to cold, and then you shut it off. So you would cycle the use of the generator to conserve fuel, because I really believe that in a grid down situation, there's going to be a run. There's going to be a run on fuel, and there are going to be very few locations that have fuel. And when they run out of fuel, they're not going to get deliveries because the terminals don't have generator backup to pump fuel from the delivery or the storage terminals to the tanker trucks that deliver to the fuel stations, the gas stations, if you will. It's a big problem. So if you're going to consider a solar system, I suggest you follow what Dr. Shealy and I are talking about, which is if you want independence, you absolutely, positively must have a battery bank. You must, or you have no independence. The grid goes down, you've got nothing. Even though it looks like you've got something, you've got nothing. Unless you can live on, no, you have nothing. You have nothing because you still need that 60-cycle reference frequency. It's as simple as that. Any other questions, Dr. Shealy?
No, great. I think that's a great overview.
Okay, wonderful. So Have you met anybody who has an on-grid system or an inverter or grid-tied system?
Well, unfortunately, nobody's ever mentioned it to me, and I've never thought about asking it until this came up this weekend. And that's why I thought it was critically important that you prepared people understand this.
Okay. Well, here's one other little thing that we'll share since we talked about it. It'll only take maybe 2 minutes. So you literally, class, you can buy a grid-tied inverter, a little box. And it'll look like, about the size of a shoebox. And you can hook it up to a solar panel or two. If you hook it up properly, it will work. And then what you do is you plug that in to your house wiring. So let's say you have a garage and you can lean some panels just to test this thing out. Lean a couple solar panels against the side of the garage, pointing south, in the direct sunlight. And so the solar panels receive the sunlight, and you've got it wired with a plus and a minus wire to the inverter, and then the inverter is plugged into your garage wiring. Now, the theory behind this is the solar panels will provide electricity. The grid-tied inverter will invert that DC from the solar panels, DC electricity, to AC at a higher voltage than would be coming out of your outlet. So you'll be pushing electricity backwards onto the grid. Now, some people think that they can make their meter run backwards by doing that. So it's a real simple, cheap way to do it. So for, let's say, $400 worth of solar panels, a couple panels, and a couple $100 grid-tied inverter. So we're looking at, let's say, $500 maybe, $600 to do this little experiment. And you plug it in, and the lights will blink on the grid-tied inverter, and it will show that you are generating electricity and pushing it onto the grid, theoretically lowering your electric bill. But that may not be the case, because I did that experiment. And here's what our meter does. Our meter says, I don't care which way the electricity is going, whether you're pushing it onto the grid or you're taking it off the grid, we're going to charge you for it. So I was being charged, during the little term of my experiment, I was being charged for the electricity that I was giving the grid at the full retail rate. So I was pushing electricity on the grid. I was being charged 10 cents to give it to the grid, and I was being charged 10 cents to take it from the grid. So I was being charged to give electricity away. So depending on the meters that you have, if you have a meter that does not recognize the direction of the current, they're going to be, your electric company or your electric cooperative will be charging you for the electricity you give them. So make sure you don't do that without finding out how the meters work. Okay? That was just a kind of an interesting thing, Dr. Shealy, that you can provide electricity and get charged for doing it. David in Illinois, you're on with Dr. Norman Shealy and me. Welcome.
How you doing?
Hey.
I need to ask you a question about your battery. So your battery system that you installed, it sees itself as one main 48-volt battery?
Yes, David, and Dr. Shealy, here's in class. If you pop the hood on your car or truck and you look at your battery, a battery is a collection of cells, more than one cell. Okay, 2 cells make a battery, 3 cells make a battery, 40 cells make a battery if they're wired in series. Okay, when we use the term battery incorrectly many times. So if you had an old flashlight that had D-sized cells, those are not batteries. Those are cells. But if you put one behind the other, that would put them in series. So you would take one D cell, or dry cell it used to be called, behind another. Those 2 cells would form a battery. So if you look at your car battery under the hood of your car, you would see 6 slight partitions in some of the cases. So there are actually 6 separate cells divided into plastic compartments, each with a separate battery vent and fill cap. The new ones actually are covered up with a label so you can't see the fill caps. They don't want you messing around by putting distilled water, topping off your battery so it'll last longer. But if you could, or if you think back to the times when you used to see those fill caps, there'd be 6 of them for a 12-volt battery. So a 12-volt battery is really 6 cells of 2.1 volts each, or a 12-volt battery is 12.6 volts. if it's new. Okay? So those cells are in series. You just can't see the wiring because it's all buried in the plastic case of a car battery. But there are 6 separate cells to make up a 6 times 2.1 is 12.6 volts. Does that answer that question?
Yes.
Or you want to know about, in our case, ours has, each one of our cells is about the size of 3 car batteries stacked one on top of the other on top of the other. So it's like 3 car batteries high, and that would be one cell. So it weighs, one cell for our solar array weighs about 100 pounds. And then we have them strapped together with stainless steel connectors. They're really heavy. They're like heavy stainless steel plates bolted on the battery top connectors from one battery to the next, to the next, to the next. So there's 40 of them all connected to each other. So the first one, let's say is minus. Minus connects to our inverter. And then the next battery is plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus, and then we end up with a plus at the end. So we have one plus and one minus of this collection of cells strapped together as one battery bank. I don't know if I answered that.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to use a simpler example to ask you a question about this. Now, say I went with 48-volt system, too. Now, the batteries that I was looking at putting together, just for a quick example, was like marine batteries. What I was thinking of doing is putting 4 12-volt marine batteries and then having another set of 4 12-volt marine batteries. So if one battery bank was default or I had a problem or it was down, I would have a backup where I can utilize that other one so the whole battery system's not down if something goes awry.
Yeah, so absolutely. What you're doing is a series parallel arrangement where you have a string of 12-volt batteries, 12 plus 12 plus 12 plus 12 in terms of volts equals 48. And then you're going to have another one, 12 plus 12 plus 12 plus 12 equals 48 volts. So you're going to have 2 strings of 48, and then you're going to tie those together if you wanted to. That would work. That would be fine. That's a series parallel arrangement. And that would work fine. And the marine batteries, which are, we'll talk about that in just a second. Class Dr. Norm Shealy is with us. David is with us in Illinois. And here's something that you both in the class might be interested in knowing. So there's 2 general types of batteries for automobiles and, small tractors, and they are marine type batteries. They're also known as deep cycle. So deep cycle, you can say, equals marine. And then there would be a standard cycle, which would be a car or light truck battery. And there's a difference. Even though you can get them at the same store, you can buy them both at Walmart, you can buy them both at AutoZone. They are different in their technology, although they use the same electrolyte, which would be sulfuric acid and distilled water. So a marine deep cycle battery will provide a smaller amount of current, but for a longer time. So, for example, let's say you have a trolling motor on a little boat, and a little electric motor. You would want that to last a long time with very little current draw. Also, you'd like to have, for a marine battery, if you have it in the hull of a boat, and you want it to start the engine, you don't want to have to keep a charger on it all the time, because a typical car battery will go dead after about 30 days of just sitting on the shelf. So you want one that will hold its charge even when it's not being used. So that would be a marine battery or a deep cycle battery for a smaller amount of self-discharge. So, for example, we have a tractor that we keep in an area where there's no electricity. So there's no way I can put a battery charger on it and plug it into the wall. So if I left that tractor for 30 days or so without using it, I'd go out and find the battery dead. If I had a regular tractor battery, which is the same as a car battery, which is the same as a light truck battery. But if I put a marine battery in there, the same size, I could go out there 6 months later and it'd still have a charge, and I could start the tractor. But it's not designed for a large current draw when, like starting an engine. that is a tremendous amount of electric draw for a short time. You crank the engine, a lot of current comes out of the battery for a very short time. You know you can't charge. You know you can't crank an engine for 2 minutes because the battery will be dead. You know that you can't crank an engine for more than 30 seconds without the battery being dead. You know that. And that would be a standard battery, which would give you a lot of current for a short amount of time, but they have a higher self-discharge rate just sitting around, on the shelf, for example, or not being used in the equipment. So I wanted to share that. Dr. Shealy, do you have any questions or thought about that?
No, I think that's great. Great info.
Okay. David, any questions about that?
Oh, no, I was wanting to ask you a question about their generator, though.
Okay.
Okay. Now, we do the very same thing that you said that you do, but we also, during that time, we're letting our refrigerators and freezers get up to temperature, and then, once they kick off, then at that time, we're charging up anything that we use that has battery power, like we have portable LCD emergency TVs, where we can, find out the news. But one thing about that, when that happens and we shut it off, the only thing nice about that is your neighbors think you run out of gas every 4 or 5 hours, so they don't pester you to use your generator. But now, my thing is, my generator, I have 11 horse Tecumseh, and it's not an auto start. So I use starter fluid with my wife in the wintertime because she can't, that thing's heavier than her. But some people said I shouldn't do that at all.
It's a gasoline engine? It's a gasoline engine? Yeah. Well, okay, so starting ether, we use it here at the farm. I don't like using it on diesels if we can avoid it. It's not recommended, however, if you use a small amount of it on a gasoline engine and you spray it onto the air cleaner and then put the air cleaner cover on, you'll generally find that you can start it with 1 or 2 pulls as compared to a lot more pulls. And so I will use it. But it's risky using it on a diesel engine because the explosive force can break the rings of a diesel engine. As a matter of fact, Chevrolet or General Motors with their 6.5 liter diesel say, whatever you do, don't do it. Don't do it. You'll break the rings, the piston rings. So beware. Now, I do it if I have to. I don't do it as a matter of course.
Yeah, I've only had to use that in the wintertime when it's really, really cold and the power will go out.
Well, here's another thing you can do. If you can carefully take a little bit of gasoline and put it on the air cleaner element instead of the spray starting fluid, the gasoline will volatilize right from the air cleaner, and then it will make it easier to start. What we used to do back in the 1950s and 60s, we had carburetors, and sometimes you just couldn't get that car to start. But if you poured a small amount, like a teaspoon of gasoline right down the carburetor throat for a car, it'd start right up. So you might want to use, a quarter of a teaspoon right into the carburetor. Sometimes we have to do that. So those are just a few thoughts. Anything else before we got 10 seconds?
Thank you very much. And I didn't know that about the charge controller.
Great. Right. Well, thank you for calling in, Dr. Shealy, and I'll be right back after these messages. We're going to be talking about the coronavirus. You all blessed? Hour number 2 of the USA Prepares. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Dr. Shealy, there are many thoughts regarding the coronavirus that is believed to have originated in China. And
the interesting thing about it is that most of the viruses arise in China. That's not new.
Mm-hmm. Well, I read a report that said that it was from Canada and it was stolen, and the jar broke in China. The equivalent of something like that. It had a little humor to it, but it got out. It escaped from a BL 4 or 5 biohazard location in China. Well, so some people think that's it. Some people think that, well, this is a smokescreen. This is not true. There's no merit to this. And by the way, it's not here. Well, that's not true. It is here. There are 5 cases at least in the United States confirmed. There are about 2,000 cases worldwide, and there are 56 deaths. So we've got about a 3% mortality rate. It seems like it's really taking off, and it's aided and abetted by air travel. You know, people hopping on these aluminum tubes, and they're sick, and they're, bringing it to other countries. Are you concerned as I am about this, Dr. Shealy, or are you not concerned about it?
Well, I'm concerned. Let's face it, flu epidemics occur occasionally, and the worst one we know in history was almost 100 years ago. And obviously, especially considering the fact that Bill Gates may be behind this also, and it may or may not be artificially created, I think we have to be ready and prepared and all the time against this kind of thing.
So I went to, as I mentioned in hour number 1, I happened to be at Aldi's, and I wanted to top off some of our provisions so that we could, if we had to just close the gate and just stay home for, a while, we could do that. And what I found was very remarkable. There were very few shoppers at Aldi. Now, Aldi is a discount, top of the line, in my opinion, high volume supermarket. Okay, they don't offer everything. So if you want the latest in coffees, you're probably not going to find it there. If you want the latest in teas, you're probably not going to find it there. But they have the common items that most people would want. They have a deli section. They have breads. They have cereals. They have, meats and cheeses and produce. But it's really high volume. And what I saw for the first time in a very long time at Aldi was people pushing their carts, very few pushing their carts, and very few items in the carts. I couldn't believe it. You would think that people would say, you know what, let's get some toilet paper. Let's get some cans of beans. Let's get some cans of baked beans. Let's get some pasta, whether it be, gluten-free or, I'm talking about sustenance here. I'm not talking about health. I'm talking about surviving. I didn't see that. I saw just a couple items. People were very deliberate with what they were buying. And most of the people who checked out, you could just put everything that they were buying in their arms. They didn't need a cart. And I was stunned by that because I was thinking there is a possibility that there could be a run on the food stores because of this coronavirus. But I didn't see anybody who was paying attention to any of that. They're just, buying as they normally would because, well, heck, the grid's going to be up. The supplies are going to continue going down the road and being distributed. Everything's fine. No worries.
Vince, remember, only roughly 2.7% of Americans are conscientious enough to take care of themselves. That's what percent of Americans have the basic, absolutely essential for life, health habits. That means that 97.3% or so of Americans have 1, 2, God knows how many, up to 10 or more unhealthy habits. I doubt that more than 3% of Americans are even conscious of being prepared.
So I mentioned to you during hour number 1, I met this gal who was interested in, or she was selling solar systems, on-grid systems, and she was trying to pick out a type of fish, and I was chatting with her. She said, I don't want to buy the farm-raised fish because they swim in their own poop. And I said, okay, so what's the alternative?
I don't think that's the reason for farm fish, but anyway.
Well, that's what she thought, and she wanted to buy ocean. She wanted to buy ocean swimming fish, and I said, well, what about Fukushima? And she wasn't sure what I was saying. Now, here's a gal who's pretty educated. She didn't know about the radioactivity that's being released and has been released into the oceans, the pollutions, the plastics, and the, the plastics that these fish are thinking is fish food, and they're eating that and they're dying. So she wasn't thinking about any of that, but what she was thinking about was she doesn't want the fish swimming in their own poop. Well, the ocean fish swim in their own poop too. And they swim in motor oil and diesel oil and everything else we dump in the sea. Yeah. So, I'm not trying to beat her up. I'm just saying I was stunned at the number of people who were not paying attention. And you've mentioned, the 3% or less, a bunch of times. And you're absolutely right. We're not paying attention. Not we, they. They are not paying attention to what's happening. So if you look at how this is spreading so quickly, 56 deaths worldwide. The Chinese are building. Right now, they're building a hospital. They're going to build a hospital in a week or less. Literally, I looked at the images. There are about 50 track hoes. Now, these are massive, massive earth-moving machines with bulldozer-type tracks instead of tires. I'm not talking about a couple skid steers. I'm talking about 50 track hoes and about 20 dump trucks to scrape the earth, fill the dump trucks, move the dirt to another part of this location where they're building this hospital. So there are 70 heavy machines, 70, simultaneously digging, scraping, filling, moving dirt. I mean, this is a massive project. And 3 or 4 days into it, they've got the footer and the concrete pad already poured in a few days. We couldn't get people to show up for a meeting in 4 days to talk about it, let alone to get everybody staged, to have the plastic for under the concrete, have the concrete poured, leveled. Amazing.
Well, Dad, remember, 45% of American food consumed is at what I call junk food restaurants, all fast food restaurants. I wouldn't even drink coffee there.
Right. Well, that's a huge problem.
And 60% of the food in the grocery stores is junk. And so until Americans will wake up to something as basic as food, you can't expect them to have common sense about everything else.
No, I agree with that. I agree. And I was talking to a gentleman. I don't think he's going to call in. I also, normally, here's what I said to the family. I said, here's my take on this. There are people who are saying that you don't have to worry about this coronavirus. No big deal. It's not going to be here. We're not going to run into anybody. Oh, really? Well, there's an airport in Springfield, Missouri. There's an airport in Branson. There's airports in Kansas City and St. Louis. So people are flying in all the time. They touch, they come in contact with people who come in contact with people who come in contact with people. And this is, they're saying that it's spread through the eyes, through coughing, sneezing, contact. Sounds like it's pretty easy to get. And 3% of the people die, and there are a lot of people, a couple thousand with cases identified so far. And they're saying that about 90,000 people will get this by February. Now, that's like a week away. 90,000. That's huge because the R-nought, the expression R-nought in epidemiology is the basic reproduction of an infection that can be thought of as the number of cases that one case can generate on average over the course of its infectious period. So that means, for example, if the first person to get it, if the R-nought is 2, that means that the original infected person will infect 2 more. And each one of them will infect 2 more. And each one of them will infect 2 more. So if the R-nought number is 4, by the time that the first person contacts the second person, there will be 20 people infected. 20 with an R-nought of 4. And we don't know the R-nought number for the coronavirus. We don't know. And there is no vaccination and there is no treatment that works. None.
And did you see this silly, stupid thing yesterday? CDC is working on a 90-day vaccine. Now, it's not possible to produce a safe vaccine in a year, let alone in 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well.
So here was my take on this. I decided that there were a couple things that we should get over the weekend. And I mentioned to the family, we have family meetings. It's like 1950 or 1960 here at our farmhouse. Breakfast, the family eats together. Lunch, the family eats together. Dinner, the family eats together. Unless somebody is doing something that, for the business or for the farm or something like that. So unless someone is away from the farmhouse, for example, we're all together. We're all working together. We're all pulling the same way, and we're working in concert. So we have family meetings, and one of those family meetings was, okay, so here's the deal. Nobody goes out and does anything risky. Now, we don't go to movies, so that I would consider that being risky. Going to a ball game, I would consider that being risky. Flying, going to a restaurant now is risky because you really don't know. You don't know who has come in contact with who has come in contact with who. So we decided that before this thing spreads anymore, there was a couple things that we wanted to get in the firearms arena. So I went to a very small gun show with our son, and I ran into a guy who said he was going to try to call in because he has type 2 diabetes. And he said, but he likes sugar. He likes sugar, and he doesn't know if he can get away from sugar. So if he calls in, that'd be great. I gave him the number. I gave him my name. I gave him everything he needed to know to call you. But he doesn't really want to change his diet and fix his diabetes. How about that? That's where we are. We'll be right back. Talk about the coronavirus with Dr. Norm Shealy. NormShealy.com, NormShealy.com. Randy in Texas, welcome. You're on with Dr. Shealy.
Hey, good morning, guys. I just want to kind of raise a couple of things about the coronavirus. I don't believe what we're hearing. I don't believe that there's only been less than a couple of hundred deaths on this. We've got to remember our United States government lies about the vast majority of things we hear. The Chinese government lies about everything. But a couple of things we do know for fact is that the Chinese government has quarantined 7 cities. Almost 80 million people in China have been quarantined. I believe the death rate is a lot higher. I believe this virus is spreading faster. And this comes back to about being practical, about what do you do about this. I think you have to have other things than just food to be ready to be quarantining yourself to keep other people away. I think you're going to have items like bleach. I think you need to stop. I've stopped shaking people's hands. And I think you're going to have to avoid going to large groups. I think that those are prudent things to do. I live in Houston. I still have businesses that I have to run, but I'm being practical about what I do. I had a client. He's been traveling the United States a lot this last couple of weeks, and he asked to see me, and I said, hey, let's talk on the phone. There's no reason for us to actually see each other. And he said, you're concerned about this virus. And I said, hell yeah, I'm concerned about it. I think we need to start taking practical steps and to secure our safety. Dr. Shealy, are things like bleach, are those items good to use to disinfect items?
Yes, even hydrogen peroxide.
Okay, hydrogen peroxide. I'm going to write that down. Hydrogen peroxide. Okay. What are there any other steps that we should be taking?
Everybody right now who weighs 140 pounds or more should be taking 50,000 units of vitamin D3 once a week, and if you weigh less than that, every 10 days. That's at the top of my list. Everybody should be taking at least 2 grams of vitamin C a day and have plenty on hand.
How much of the vitamin D3 did you say?
50,000 units if you weigh 140 pounds or more, once a week.
Okay. All right. And that's a day, correct?
Yes. No, a week.
A week. A week. Okay. Per week for the D3, but the vitamin C, that is 2 grams a day, correct?
Yes.
All right. All right.
And astaxanthin? Yes, astaxanthin, Dr. Shealy?
I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, that would be great. 20 milligrams.
Okay.
Randy, I've got a comment for you. What you just said so concisely and eloquently and succinctly in your opening few statements, actually everything you said, is exactly, almost verbatim, with the family meeting that we had yesterday and the day before and the day before. Would you mind staying with us, because you bring up some very good points, and I just want to put an exclamation point on one of the things that we all can do to help us with our security and our survival. Can you stay with us through the break?
Absolutely.
Okay. We'll be right back. Dr. Norm Shealy and Randy in Texas. Just a quick update. Friday, hour number 1 will be Lark in Texas. Hour number 2, it'll be just me with some tips from the book. Randy, you mentioned some very important points. We have discussed all of those here at the family meetings the last 3 days.
I would like to say, I particularly agree also. I wouldn't trust the governor to tell me the time of day.
Right. So as you, Randy, and Dr. Shealy, we don't believe the government numbers. When China is building a hospital in less than a week and they're building 3 more, that tells me that this is pretty serious. If you look at the airports in China, almost everyone, if not everyone, has a face mask on. So he mentioned. So here's some of our thoughts here at USA Prepares. Bleach, yes, unscented, plain old bleach. It doesn't have to be Clorox brand. It can be any brand you want. It's all the same thing. Just don't get any scented, lemon scented, or any other scented bleach. Just plain old bleach. Okay? And you should keep that for disinfecting purposes. Look on the internet as to how you can use it. But you should also have it for your well. Okay? We keep it here, and we disinfect our well more often now. It seems like now it's every 6 months. We pour some bleach down the well and disinfect and kill the bacteria in the well, because we don't know. We don't know today if our well was good yesterday. We don't know if it's good today.
Vincent, we're not taking any chances. Do you just pour like a cup of the bleach just straight down the pipe?
Several ways you can do it. Yes, you can. What you need to do, if you have a well cap, and you can loosen the well cap, take that off. And of course you want to wear some protection, eye protection, and you want to wear some gloves. And you can take plain bleach and you can pour about, and look it up, okay? I'm not going to give you the exact numbers, but it depends on who you believe. But here's what we do. We pour about a quart down the well. And we have a clean bucket with clean water already ready before we start this process, in case we have to douse someone and rinse someone off. But that's how we'd use it immediately. But we take the clean water and rinse the well casing on the inside, all the way down. So you might need a 5-gallon bucket with 4 gallons of water in it. Clean water, the same kind of water you drink, because you're going to be pouring this in your well. You don't want this to be muddy water. This needs to be potable water. And you pour that down the well pipe, and you rinse off the bleach all the way down. And then you let it set for, let's say a half hour or so. Then you want to run the well pump, flush the lines in your house so that you smell chlorine in each faucet, okay, the shower head, the toilet, everything. You want to flush your lines, and then you let it sit for about 30 minutes. So the chlorine will disinfect the pipes in your house, and then you want to flush out all of that chlorine from the well and the pipes. And so you're going to run your faucets until you smell no more chlorine. And that's how you do it.
Vince, how effective do you think ultraviolet light filters of all water coming out of the well are?
I bought ultraviolet C for a whole house water filtration system. Klaus, you can buy it from China. You can buy it directly from China. You can buy it from eBay. And what it is, it's a UV light inside of a quartz lens, a cylinder. And so there's a UV light in there, and the water goes around this quartz lens, and the UV breaks up the DNA of the bacteria, renders it useless. Okay? It's still there, but it's useless. So the next thing you can do is you can filter with a whole house filter, 5 microns, and then filter that water. And then the next thing you would do is, if you have a water softener, then that water would go into the water softener. Those lights only last 8,000 hours. That's the life expectancy. And if you do the arithmetic, you'll find out that that's 1 year. So if you get one of these systems, and I have one, Dr. Shealy, I paid about $200, and I bought spare UV tubes. And I'm going to push them longer than the 8,000 hours. I might take them to maybe 1.5 times 8,000, so 12,000 hours. And then I'm going to replace the tubes, because even though the tube seems to work, it loses its ability to generate ultraviolet light. Second thing I did, gentlemen and class, is I bought UV LED lighting, UVC. C is the one that kills destroys the DNA. And I have it in the ductwork of our air handling system. And it's on 24 hours a day. You can get fluorescent, or you can get LED. And you can buy it directly from China. And I don't have a problem with buying from China. And, well, I didn't until the last couple of days. So here's the next thing that we've done. And I think this may answer part of your question, Dr. Shealy. I have UV LED tubes. And I'm going to build a box. And I'm going to have on 2 sides of this box LED ultraviolet light. The idea, in my thinking, and you don't want to look at ultraviolet light. It'll damage your eyes. So my plan is to, if I get a package that comes into the house, it's going to stay outside. We're going to use latex gloves to handle it. I'm talking about like a UPS delivery or a FedEx delivery or U.S. mail. Goes in the box. And 30 minutes of exposure to UV. Because I'm not trusting anybody. I'm not. So gentlemen, is that clear what I just mentioned? Or do you need further description?
I've had ultraviolet on our well output for a number of years. And it's replaced once a year.
Mm-hmm. And you're looking at about 1 year of life expectancy of the tubes. So you may want to get them. And where do they come from? There's only one place that makes them, or one country, China. So you might want to get them. Next thing, Randy, is that kind of clear what we talked about, or do you need more information about that?
No, that's cool. That's good.
Okay. Next thing, you said stop shaking hands. Absolutely. Next thing you mentioned, avoid large groups. So we heard the news announcement that Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash. All right? Helicopters are a risky business. No matter how you think about it, helicopters are really, really dangerous. All right. So we have a basketball player who died in a helicopter, risky business, and ball games. Now, can you think of a more sweaty environment than a basketball game?
No.
Yeah. Well, maybe a sauna, maybe a gym, where people are, we'll call it a fitness center. They used to call them gyms. Other than that, hardly, right? So there's a guy who was involved in risky business in multiple ways, and he probably wasn't even thinking about the coronavirus. So the reason I mentioned that, class, is restaurants, conventions, airplanes, buses, those are all places where there are lots of bodies in a small place. So I would avoid them, and we are. And the reason that we went to a gun show over the weekend was that's probably the last one we're going to go to, because I don't know who else is going to a gun show. Next thing, 80 million in quarantine, almost 80 million in quarantine. Can you imagine? Imagine living in a location where it's okay yesterday to leave, but not today. So today there's a guy with a machine gun and his buddy, and they're saying, turn around. You're not leaving. Randy, you mentioned no more visitors. I got a call over the weekend. Guy wanted, hey, I'd like to come over. I said, I can't do it this weekend. I couldn't do it this weekend. I was working on a project. I couldn't do it. But that is the message from now on. Because let's say you have a friend and, family friends, maybe neighbors. And you like to hang out with them and, you do things together. You help them, they help you, and it's a great relationship. Let's assume that's the case. That's hardly ever the case, but let's assume that. And so he has a job and he travels. He works for Texaco or Exxon or some company, and he has to fly here and there. And he comes home, and then he's home for a couple days before he flies out again, and it's the weekend, and his wife wants to see your wife. Come on over. Talk about baking or whatever girls talk about. Is that risky? You bet. You bet, because she's with him, and he's with the airplane. That's a big problem. So no more people who are flying and involved in risky business, we're not doing that anymore at our farm. Mrs. Finelli and I were picking up over the weekend some items. Our son picked up the gloves. He got nine boxes of latex gloves, 9 boxes. Well, they were on sale, Harbor Freight, you can get them there. And we use them all the time in the automotive shop. Well, now we have more because we don't want to touch anything. So you might want to consider that. And then the hand wipes. Mrs. Finelli said, well, what about these Clorox wipes? I said, okay, but I got a better idea. Let's go with Nixol, a 2-ounce spray bottle. Keep it in your pocket if you have to go someplace, and you can spray Nixol, Nixall, out of it. You can get a gallon of it and pour it off into a 2-ounce sprayer and keep that in your pocket, and that's better than Clorox wipes. Hydrogen peroxide, Dr. Shealy mentioned that. Absolutely correct. Shopping carts. Are you going to touch a shopping cart?
No.
Why would you do that? I mean, how many people touch their faces and their noses? Everybody. Okay, so they touch their face, their nose, and the shopping cart handle. If you have to use one, that's the time for the latex gloves, right? Vegetables. So what about handling vegetables? Now, who just touches one bunch of bananas? Nobody. Anybody buying bananas looks at this one? Nah, it's got some brown spots. How about that one? No, that one's got brown. This one doesn't have so many brown spots. Let's get this one. So they touch at least 2, 3, 4, 5 before they get the one they want. Lettuce, same thing. Tomatoes, same thing. Okay? So now your vegetables have been touched, not only in the field, but by consumers. So what do? Here's what we do, and I'd like Dr. Shealy's opinion on this. We bought, over the weekend, 4 one-gallon jugs of white vinegar to go with our other 4 gallons of white vinegar, to go with our other 4 gallons of white vinegar. Why? Because we take about a 10% white vinegar solution, use ProPure filtered water, and we wash our vegetables in that. So a 10% solution of vinegar, 90% water. Dr. Shealy, what do you think about that for killing some of the pathogens that may be on vegetables?
Excellent.
Do you have any other suggestions that you'd like to add?
No, I'm glad you mentioned Nixol, by the way, which is like it's better than bleach and a little bit safer for a lot of things. You don't have to dilute it.
Okay, so we have Nixol here, Nixall. You can use that. You can use hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is pretty corrosive. It'll probably eat a spray bottle, the mechanism of a spray bottle. I think. I haven't really tested it, but I think it will. And don't touch your face, because if you've touched something and you rub your eye, and it's easy to do. We all touch our faces about 1,000 times a day or more. Don't touch your nose. Don't touch your face. Don't touch your lips. Don't scratch. Because you can become infected by something that is on your hands that you haven't even seen. You can't see it. Dr. Shealy, any comments about that?
No, I'm with you all the way, Big Blue.
Okay. So we went to this gun show, our son and I topped off on some supplies. Class, do you have the ammunition you need? Do you? Do you have the ammunition for whatever handgun and rifle and shotgun? Do you have it? Do you have it in sufficient quantities? Or do you want to wait? Do you want to wait till later when the virus has spread some more? Do you want to do that? Randy, any comments?
No, I want to talk about this Nixol if you get it, if we can.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dr. Shealy's an expert in it. We'll be right back. In Texas is with us, and we're talking about disinfectants. And there's one called Nixol, Nixall. Nixol is Nix as in 86, kill, remove, destroy, all as in everything. Nixall, Nixall. It's made in a town in Missouri called Nixa, Nixa, Missouri. It sells for, it's twice as expensive as it was the last time I bought it. We paid $30 for a gallon. It's now $62.95. It only ships to Mo, Kansas, Texas, and Ohio, period. That's it. And Dr. Shealy, what would you like to say about Nixol?
Well, basically, it is approved for actually even spraying onto wounds. It's that safe. And it is essentially a weak form of a type of bleach that has been developed specifically to be able to, be used directly on human flesh, including wounds. You can use it for toenail fungus as well, and any kind of infection on the skin.
I was looking up Milo's telephone number. I don't have it. Dr. Shealy, are you still in contact with Milo from Nixol?
Mostly by email, yes.
Okay. If you could forward his email address or phone number, after the broadcast or whenever you have time, I'd appreciate that. I'll see if I can get him on. Milo Carter is a USA Preparedness instructor, and he'd been talking about Nixol for darn close to 6, 7, maybe even 8 years. And he exhibited this at the Get Prepared Expo, our expo, and he brought a whole bunch in and sold out. Nobody could believe it. Absolutely sold out because it's that good. Analyte water is what it's known as well. Analyte. And you can go to Nixall.com, Nixall.com. And if you'd like, let them know that Dr. Shealy and Vincent Finelli sent you. Okay, and there's a telephone. I've got a telephone number. I'll give it to you right now for questions about Nixol. 417-725-2816. 417-725-2816. So if you wanted to buy 2 gallons, it's $109.95, shipping included. If you want to buy a quart, it's $29.95, shipping included. If you want to buy 2 quarts, it's $54.95. Shipping included. If you want to buy a gallon, it's $62.95. Nixall, Nixall.com. Randy, you brought up some very, very important points, very succinctly, and I believe that this is real. I believe the numbers are underreported. I believe that it's serious. Now, some people are saying, well, if it was that serious, they would have shut down air travel. I don't think it's that easy in the United States because the commerce is involved. Shutting down the airlines, that would be a big problem for a lot of people who like to go on vacations. It's not a problem for me. I'm not going. I'm going to lock the gate. I'm not kidding. I'm going to lock the gate. Randy, what are you going to do?
Well, I am thinking about taking my family and going to the property that we've got in rural Limestone County, Texas. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then just trying to do everything remotely for business.
Mm-hmm. Do you have everything? Do you have everything you need there?
No, unfortunately. Well, I've got to take it with me.
Okay, so that's okay. So your homework tonight, Randy, and class, is sit down with your family and say, what do we need? So we're going on a trip for 3 months. What should we bring? Oh, well, we should bring a pair of scissors. We should bring some bandages, some vitamins, some minerals, some water purification equipment. We should bring some hydrogen peroxide, some Nixol. Let's bring some food, some sleeping blankets, and some dry cells, and some batteries, and a solar panel, and maybe a small generator, some gasoline, and some oil filters, and some extra fuel. And the list is huge. Huge. It's a big problem. So what you ought to start doing is what we've been saying for years. Buy a farm. Get everything on the farm. Because the friends of yours who are going to want to come visit you and who fly around or have spouses who fly around or travel or go to, the movie theater, you're not going to want them with you. So you're going to have to know how to do everything. And then you can have Google to look things up, or do you have books? Do you bring the books with you? It's a huge problem. Dr. Shealy?
I'm with you all the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for years, I've been collecting encyclopedia sets, how to do it, a scientific encyclopedia, every kind of book you can think of, medical books, physician's desk references, the home family doctor, in case we can't reach Dr. Shealy, walkie-talkies, different frequency walkie-talkies, chargers and replacement batteries and solar panels and everything you can think of, including food, including canning equipment. What do you need to do? Everything we've been talking about for 8 years. Right, Dr. Shealy? Everything we've been talking about for 8 years. That's what you need to do.
True preparedness.
Yeah, you need to do it tonight. So have that meeting. Randy, why don't you would you please do this? Would you have that meeting with your family and call us back and let us know how it went? If you don't share secrets, but how did it go, and what were your thoughts? Did it work? Did the meeting work? Would you do that, please?
Absolutely.
All right. See you next week, Randy. Dr. Shealy, thank you so much. See you next week as well.